All right, we're going to go to Muzzy here. Hey, Muzzy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. So,
Alaikum salam.
what I wanted to ask you is, how do you not reconcile in a way, but square up this idea of, like traumatic incidents to like people who have had like brain injuries, who have lost their, in a way, sense of self. Like there was a famous incident back in the 1800s when someone got a pole through the head. And it was a train. It's quite famous. They teach it in psychology, medical school, literally everything. And he had a pole go through his brain, and his perception changed. But he was still himself, but something changed about him. So I was thinking if they could use this as an argument to say that there's something physical about consciousness. But just another interesting thought. Obviously, I'm like a medical school student. I'm in my fourth year. So when you study conjoined twins who are conjoined with the brain, it's interesting that they still have this individualistic will despite sharing motor functions in the brain, which is quite interesting. But then, obviously, I was going to ask you about the thing about traumatic brain injuries to see what you guys think.
Yeah. I don't know who wants to tackle it first, if anybody.
I'll just say one sentence that I think, I mean, if I'm not misunderstanding this, I think this is more related to the easy problem of consciousness, because we do acknowledge that there are interactions and there are correlations between the physical aspects of our neural activity and our consciousness, and this is more a question to do with personal identity and mental continuity and stuff, which I think is a problem that is related to consciousness, but it's not. I don't think it's like the hard problem of consciousness itself, which deals with like self-awareness and qualia. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it directly tackles the hard problem of consciousness. All it shows us is that there are correlations between our neurological activity and our perceived personal identity, or even our consciousness, which we do acknowledge. I mean, dualists don't deny that there is some kind of a correlation or an interaction or interdependence between the physical and the non-physical.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that
Sorry, go ahead.
any of those scientific medical examples do not in any shape or form undermine the kind of independence of non-physical consciousness and the physical brain. It doesn't undermine it at all in any shape or form. And a really easy thought experiment is to think about someone driving a car, right? So in order for so you have a driver and you have a car. In order for the driver to start driving the car has to work, right? If the car doesn't work and the driver is okay, then the driver is not going to go anywhere. Conversely, the car, even if it's working and the driver is dead, right? The car's not going to go anywhere. So that's a really interesting, simple way of showing that the guy in the car is like the mind, and the car itself is like the brain. Yeah, just because they need each other to kind of function in the physical world, it doesn't mean they're the same thing. And that's why you can make a very clear distinction between the driver and the car. Just because the brain is damaged, in this case, maybe the car's damaged, maybe I don't know, the gear stick's not working properly. If something's gonna happen, the driver, he may be a fully functional, great driver, but if the gear stick's not working properly, then the car's not going to be moving that well, right? So these examples in medicine, even in medical history, do not undermine in any shape or form the fact that consciousness can be independent to physicality in any shape or form. And yes, I would echo what Abdul said as well. Even if they were to try and make that claim, still doesn't solve the hard problem of consciousness, which is what is it like for an individual human being to have an inner subjective conscious experience, and why do these phenomenal conscious states, inner subjective conscious states, arise from neurobiological physical things in the first place? So that would be my answer to that particular question.
Right. And even when you have cases like when they remove half of someone's brain, it's not like you have half of the consciousness or half of the person. There's still a unified consciousness. So if you thought that there was a direct correlation, we would expect to find something different. And interestingly enough, there are some people, you can actually look it up. I forget the name of the brain disorder or issue, but there are people that actually only have 10% of the normal brain matter, and yet they can function to up to 75% as quote unquote normal as we would with a full brain. So if that were true, we would expect to see something radically different than that. So I think that also helps to understand and capture what's happening.
Well, to throw something a spanner in the work. Oh, sorry, Sharif. Just very quickly, to throw something as a spanner into the works, there's this new thing called neurocardiology that's been discussed for the past 20 or 30 years or something.
Yeah.
That the heart now has its own brain. It's got like 40,000 neurons, right? And I think
Stomach as well.
Sorry?
The stomach as well.
Yeah,
Apparently
the stomach. Would you believe it?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting when you refer to some hadith talking about the stomach, right? The stomach lied, right? Now, obviously, there's an interpretation to that, but it just gives a different spin to these hadith. So the heart, you know, and neuroscientists, by the way, I haven't studied this properly. It's in the literature. It's in the medical literature. They're not studying this properly. It's actually cardiologists that are studying the kind of the brain of the heart, if you like. It's got about 40,000 neurons. And this also shows the scientific method is based on induction. We'll have new data that can undermine previous conclusions. It's in flux. So God knows, you know, and that's why there's been some evidence to show. I'm not saying it's conclusive, but when people have heart transplants, people's memories, they have different memories or slight personality changes as well. So, you know, what they're going to say about that? That now consciousness is in the heart? Okay, well, thank you. That's like the Islamic paradigm. Jazakallah khair. You see my point? I just want to throw that in there because that's very interesting. Sorry, bro.
Yep. And Muzzy, you can make a quick comment, and then we're going to have to go to the next guest if you have any final thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to say with what you said about it's the they split the corpus callosum, which is the band of like nerve fibers in the middle of the brain. And you're right, consciousness doesn't really split. And I've seen atheists try to redefine it and saying that we've discovered that consciousness changes, but they mean like certain like physical, emotional experiences because you're affecting the physical brain. So they tried to redefine the term. But yeah, it's funny that even when you split the brain, the consciousness is still unified.
Yep. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on and asking your question, Muzzy. I guess we'll talk to you another time. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Thank you.